and good morning. Welcome to One Decent Pastor.
Well, I thank you, Chad. It was a very nice welcome.
I tried to change it up slightly from the normal.
Was it changed?
Slightly.
What was different?
Normally I say, and we're live.
Oh.
I didn't say that today. Well, I just now
okay.
said it, but I
Your
didn't say
tone,
that.
though, was like very professional and
Yeah.
controlled. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a real radio
Tried to do
announcer
my
guy.
best, DJ voice.
Sounded pretty serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually did.
We're at the top of the hour and coming to you today.
I was a radio DJ. So,
Oh, that's right. You were.
I mean, I actually.
You should do this every time then.
I'm okay.
Well,
Why
that's
am I
why we
doing
had
this?
him do like the intro and the outro voice.
Right.
It's because we thought that he had the best voice for it, even though those need to be redone on a better mic.
That's probably true, yeah.
But you had the voice for it.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
it would be good, too, if you did this when you said it.
Oh, yeah. Just
Yeah,
for those that
there
can't see,
you
put
go.
the fingers up to the
Okay,
ear.
right.
Yeah.
Like Secret Service or what?
No, it's just like the radio announcer guys.
Oh,
you know,
gotcha.
they used to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the old guys.
I don't know
Radio
why
guys
they
normally
did
wear
it,
headphones. We don't have headphones that we wear here.
This just in.
They're
Yeah.
over there.
Breaking news.
Yeah. Welcome, Terry. We got Pastor Terry joining us today.
Pastor Terry.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
We're gonna
Yeah.
talk
Good to be
about
here.
Google passwords. And
No, we're not. We already did.
Google Pal. I must have missed out on that one. I got here a little late today.
missed,
so.
yeah.
Okay, well, here's the short story. When Google says don't send, when they send you those passwords to get access to secure sites,
Yeah.
when they say don't send it to anybody else, don't.
Yeah, they mean it.
They did. They
even
did.
if someone contacts you saying they're from Google,
with the picture. The
Oh,
whole thing. Yeah,
wow.
just don't do that.
Yeah.
Pretty
Don't
good.
do
Yeah.
it. Don't
It's a
do it.
brave
I'm
new
not
world
saying
that we
don't
live
do
in when it comes to passwords.
Yeah, I know a guy that happened
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Just this last
Speaking
week.
for a friend.
Yeah.
I know a guy that
Yeah.
bought an arcade machine once and got a barbecue brush.
I know that guy too.
That's still one of the best ones ever.
Yeah.
It was a smoking deal, like
it was
almost too good to be true.
told him.
From a really reputable source.
Yeah.
They were called wolfdisco.com or something like that. It
Yeah.
wasn't even like a
That's
it
a
wasn't even
fantastic name.
Team
actually.
U, yeah.
Well, that was part of the point.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it took forever, and then finally the day comes, and David opens the box, and it's a little brush to put barbecue sauce on chicken.
And it was only how much?
I'm not saying. But the good news is my bank went to bat for me and got me every penny back, and I got to keep the barbecue brush.
Nice.
It was a really great deal on an
there you go.
arcade machine, a really bad deal on a barbecue brush, but you owned them.
Dude, I'm such a fool when it comes to that stuff. My wife's always going, "Do not order off those sites. I don't care what it is." And I'm like, "Well, but it's a good product."
And you know how brilliant you would have looked if it would have been the arcade machine.
would've been sick.
It would have been like,
Yeah, it was probably a risk worth taking.
yeah. That's funny.
Do we need to talk about secure passwords since we're on the subject of things?
I'm no expert, but you
Yeah,
guys
you're
probably are.
You're the techie, I think.
Yeah, both these
Isn't it?
guys.
Just saying, like, don't use your birthday or your anniversary or the year you were born. You don't use things like that. Your dog's name.
Social security number.
My
Yeah.
passwords are crazy. They got a lot of
Yeah.
characters in them.
There are apps for that.
It's 'cause you're
use the
paranoid.
password apps for
Just
secure
use an app.
passwords.
You have one master password. And
I got a friend that young guy that works at Intel, and he's on the kind of bleeding edge of stuff. And he told me a couple of years ago, in a couple of years, like now,
Yeah.
passwords are not going to be a thing. You're going to have something else because there'll be a way of mining and getting passwords in the blink of an eye.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, retinal scans, that's the next
Do you
thing.
mean an implant?
yeah, we're going to get a mark on your
Okay,
forehead or
let's-
your.
Okay,
Whoa. This devolved quickly.
this it did.
That is not the topic today.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about that book, the late great
Planet Earth.
Dude, that's a good one.
Hal Lindsey? It's not one of my favorites, David.
What's nice is he articulates all these mysteries
All the
so that we can
answers.
know exactly what they are.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Well, he explains them completely.
Yeah, everyone.
Sounds like a fantastic
He
book.
didn't talk about 6-foot and 8-foot drones.
Well, you might have. If now he would.
He talked about helicopters and
Yeah.
jets, but
He
not
did.
drones.
Right.
Fighter pilots.
He missed that one. All
Did
right.
you guys enjoy waking up to snow this morning?
Chad didn't.
Well, he didn't wake up.
He slipped and hit his head last night.
I don't
Didn't
know.
wake up.
I slept hard.
That's what I heard.
Hard. I don't know why I slept so hard, but I didn't wake up till 9 this morning. My alarm goes off at 7:30, and I woke up at actually slightly after, about 10 after 9. My alarm was just blasting, and I didn't hear it until about 10 after 9. I'm like, oh my goodness.
So you didn't shovel your driveway, obviously.
I did not shovel my driveway.
So this is going to sound really stupid and maybe even paranoid, but do you have a carbon monoxide detector in your house?
We don't have anything in our house that emits carbon monoxide.
Well,
what about
a
Sully?
wood stove can.
Does
Oh,
Sully?
it does.
Can.
Okay, well, I
given
didn't know that.
the proper condition.
All right.
Or circumstance.
Don't basset hounds emit things like that?
Basset hounds?
They
if
not
they're
carbon
gassy,
monoxide. It's another kind of oxide. I don't know which oxide it
just
is.
knocks
but-
you out immediately.
But it is a toxic oxide. I'll say
Sorry.
that.
Jazz is
Yeah.
just laying there, unconscious. Well, we're glad you're okay.
Yeah, we're glad
Yeah.
you're okay. We're
Yeah.
glad you rolled out of bed and came to join us.
Yeah, me too.
That sounds like thunder.
I think that's the parking lot being plowed.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does sound like thunder.
It does.
Yeah. We're going to do a mailbag episode today because we've had different people approach us at different times asking questions about different things. And today we're just going to kind of combine a few of them together that somewhat relate. A couple of them do. One of them maybe not. But so, yeah, that's what we're going to jump into. Unless you guys got anything else before we dive in. What?
No, I think we're good.
Terry,
No.
how's the kids program going? Can we do a quick update on that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. The
Maybe briefly describe it too for people that might not know what it is.
Okay. Well, the Door and CBC Community Bible Church are cooperating in putting on what's called a release time program. And since the Door is right across the street from 3R school, which is K through 8, Oregon law has it that kids in that age group can be released from regular class time during the school day for up to 2 hours a week of what they call religious education. And all that has to happen for that is the parents to sign a release form. So knowing that was the case, that was set up back in October. I think this is going to be like about the 8th or 9th meeting.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Started with 13 kids. Now there's 23
It's awesome.
Nice.
enrolled. However, the attendance has been like 11 or 12 the last couple of weeks, and and this is my wife was involved in the program back in Portland for years, but it's been 10, 12 years ago, and something new that we're experiencing here is the fact that the kids seem to when it's announced, in their particular class, it's time to get ready to go down to the foyer to get picked up to walk across the street to go to kids' Bible class. The kids are kind of making on the fly decision, kind of like, well, I don't think I'll go this week, and whereas before it seemed like when the parents signed them up and said go, they didn't make that decision. They had already decisions kind of made for them. So. And I don't know if it's just a new sovereignty of the child expression, or, maybe that's not the best. Well, maybe it is a good way to put it. But anyway,
Well, we do the same thing on Sunday mornings, right?
That's a fair point.
Your wife pointed that out to me because I asked her to pray about that. And she says, well, parents do the same thing.
Totally.
They just get up and it's kind of a game day call.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so anyway, long and the short of it, it's going great. We've got great volunteers, got really good teachers, and it's really all that we hoped that could be, and even more. But if there is this, but at the same time, since it's new, there's a culture being formed.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that the culture is not that, what I described. So if those that are listening and you guys could pray about that it just becomes something the kids really want to do, and that they do have a commitment that's maybe beyond what their parents are. That's, and I don't know what God has to move to do that, but I'm just praying that He'll move it. So, yeah, but it's going well. Really well.
Well, thanks to everybody that's involved. It takes many hands to do that. You have how many volunteers?
13.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you
it
guys are
takes a lot of
doing
people to
great
make it
job.
happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's an A-class crew, too.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is.
Looks like at the first of the year, we're going to also get to add back a youth group midweek, or at least Tuesday nights or somewhere in there, where we got junior hires coming in. So kind of excited to start that up again, too.
Yeah.
Justin's coming on Saturday, too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Reimer. All right, let's
that's
go.
right.
Now we can do it.
Okay.
Now we can go to hard stuff.
All right, got the easy
Where we
stuff
got to
out
use
of the
our
way.
brains.
Yeah.
First one's a softball question. What is the hypostatic union, and why is it important?
I thought sometimes the hardest part of the podcast is what we're going to call them.
Yeah.
And one idea that I had was hypostatic what?
Well, I'm glad you didn't go with that.
What?
So we didn't go with that. We just went with mailbag, but that thought did occur to me.
Yeah, hypostatic union.
Okay.
It's a big term, but I think most people have heard of the content or what it means.
The concept of it,
but maybe not the actual theological term. But what is it?
I do feel like we mentioned this one quite a bit.
We have.
Yeah.
But we're going to mention it again.
Yeah.
Because
Well, it came out. Somebody asked about it this week. Asked for resources, books or articles or whatever. And so
When you guys invited me to this, I thought it was going to be questions like, what town was Jesus born
Oh,
in?
come on.
Yeah.
Christmas trivia. Christmas trivia for third graders, fourth graders.
They don't get necessarily easy. They don't get easier. They actually
Terry, what's the hypostatic
They get harder.
union?
Why does this land on me?
Because you're the man. You're the.
we know you know.
You got the mileage.
Yeah, I do have mileage. That's true. Well, I mean, it's simply put, it's just the substantial being of one person. That's what it is. It's what hypostasis means, is substance or substantial being. And what it refers to is that Jesus Christ is one in substance, but also God and man at the same time. And you can go from there, but that's what it is. It's
and so he's 50-50, God and man.
one substance, right? No.
Two substances blended together.
Not that either.
No.
So they had the Council of Nicaea in 325. They got together to kind of slug this out, about this very issue, and they came up, I think, with the description that he was one person of two natures without confusion and without mixture, I think is the way they put it.
That's a different council. That was a later one where they nailed that the hypostatic union was Chalcedon.
Chalcedon?
That's the one where I think they came up with that phrase. Not to.
Oh, it wasn't Nicaea anyway.
Well, Nicaea was to do with Arianism, and so they were talking about similar things. But Chalcedon was later, 451, where they came out with this really strong statement that explained the nature of that. Basically, it is weird. I mean, he's got two natures that are. He's 100% of both of those things, and how do you even wrap your head around?
It's actually
that,
clever
right?
that you started with this. Because of where we're going next. So this actually makes a lot of sense.
I thought
Because
so.
that's going to explain a lot
Yeah.
of where you guys are going.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Davis just caught up.
no, I'm glad you guys are here. And he was the right guy to answer, too, by the way.
So now that begs the question, where are you going?
No,
Can you say that?
Where am I going?
Yeah. No,
Well,
you
the
said
next
somewhere
question.
go- Oh,
The next,
question.
yeah, because one of the other questions had to do with Philippians.
Sure.
Yeah.
The kind of
Kenosis.
We're not going to give it away yet because we're not there. So, so basically, the idea that Jesus is called both the Son of God and the Son of Man, we see those kinds of things.
Yep.
Why does it matter that Jesus is both fully God and fully man? Why is that important?
because we needed for the redemptive reality fully both
Yeah.
to be present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unpack that a little bit, somebody, because that is significant.
Well, we needed one of us to be a substitute, right? An atoning sacrifice. Needed to be a man, yet without sin, and it took God to do that. So that's maybe the most generic way I can put it.
We needed somebody to do what we were unable to do, to live the life that we were unable to live, right? And we needed God to step into human flesh, to become one of us, to dwell among us, to be part of us, to come to us on a rescue mission. I mean, it matters that God came to us, not that he expects us to come to him, right? It mattered that he came to us.
Yeah, it took one that was descended from Adam, that wasn't Adam, that wasn't of Adam,
Right.
in order to redeem the race.
That's it. Yeah, and again, for him to be our high priest, to be our intercessor, the fact that he was made like us, and he knows exactly what it is to be man is, huge for us. And then also, in order for the sacrifice to be sufficient to save us, he had to be fully God. And so,
Yeah.
and there's been people that have tried to do away with that in different ways over the years, and that's why they've had councils and creeds and things like that have come up to try to, make sure that this doesn't divulge into something different. So, yeah.
Well, and one of the errors that there's been many errors that that evolved from trying to parse that out and explain it, and saying that since it can't be explained, it must not be. It must be either God or man or some mixture or something like that.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think is really helpful when you get into these kind of deeper theological waters, like the nature of God and things, is to be able to confess and agree and rejoice really in what the Bible says, declares clearly about something, without being able to get your arms all the way around it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Embracing some mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Christ is a mystery, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing. Yeah.
I don't remember who said it. Somebody once said something along the lines, if God were small enough for us to figure out, he wouldn't be big enough for us to worship. Right. And the idea is like embracing some of the mystery, and not that that's just a, kind of the default answer when we can't explain something. Oh, it's just mystery. But the fact that there is mystery to God and things that we can't figure out, we can only figure out what he's revealed to us. Like that says something about who God is and how big he is, that we can't fully understand him.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the chief differences between like philosophy and theology, right? Is theology requires faith in a truth statement, whether we understand it or not.
Right.
Whereas philosophy is that thing that says the end game is to get my arms around this thing.
Yeah.
Right. But theology goes beyond philosophy when it comes to what the end game is. Right.
So the next question is similar. It's related, and so that's why I stuck them together. But this is somebody had asked about what does it mean when it says that Jesus emptied himself in Philippians 2. And the verse, Philippians 2:7, but emptied himself, taking on the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of man. And that's, What does that mean, guys? I'll just leave it at that. I can say more, but or what does it not mean?
This is debated.
It is.
And not like it doesn't have to get nasty or weird or even heretical.
It can.
It can,
Right.
but it doesn't have
Certainly
to.
can, yeah.
But it's debated
Yeah.
as far as what exactly that means. So.
Well,
There.
the word.
No. I already did this. So somebody else tee it up.
Yeah. I was just going to say that the word became flesh and dwelt among us, according to John. Right. God stepped into human flesh and lived like a human and felt the things that humans feel and subjected himself to his own creation.
Well, the word is kenosis, and it means to empty.
Yep.
That he emptied himself. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of what does the ESV say?
Yeah.
Empty?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's other translations that say like made himself of no reputation, or I wrote them down because he made himself nothing. I think the NIV says so.
Yeah. ESV says empty.
Stripped himself of glory was the Weymouth New Testament, which I thought was interesting. But
And that's the challenge, right? Is in that word.
Sure.
What does that imply? What does
Right.
that entail? What did he leave?
Jesus did
on the
not cease
on the
to be
seat?
God.
What did he not leave?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's an important point that
Yeah.
you just
He
said.
did
that,
not cease to be God.
Yeah,
It,
and-
it says that, earlier in the passage.
Yeah.
While
Though
never
he
ceasing
was
to be
God.
God.
Right.
Right. Though he was God, right? Did not. Though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, which tells us that there is an equality there.
right.
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 But by doing this thing, he's not trying to hold on to it or make sure that that he remains there. He's willing to do this other thing. So he's definitely God. It's definitely in the passage. So
Right.
I think the more that I look at this passage, I think the more it has to do with. This is going to sound weird, but hang with me. A localization, like actual presence, like where you are. So it says, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, by taking the form of a servant. So he went from a position of omnipresence, right, to something more localized by taking on the form of. That's the whole reason he also says he needed to go away when he was done here on earth, was so that he could send something better, which would
Send
be
the helper.
omnipresent, right? Basically him everywhere where he was. So, and then we go back to like John, 1:14, which you already quoted. He, the word became flesh and tabernacled among us. So I think the emptying is more, position or localization of where he was and where he went. That it was narrower where he went as far as taking on
Right.
this tent.
Yeah, no, he
Rather than attributes and characteristics, it's more
he
localization.
divested himself of certain privileges, his glory that he was always used to, had for eternity.
Right.
Some of those privileges of what that was like, and exaltation.
Yep.
He'd always been exalted. Now he's not. Well, he is now. But when he took on flesh,
Right.
And you saw what happened. And then when you become human, which we talked about, fully human, you take on attributes that are limiting. Hunger, fatigue, and
Right.
these kinds of things. So he did that, but the big error that people try to make sometimes, or try to do, is this idea. That's why they have councils like what we talked about, that he laid aside divine attributes when he took on flesh,
Which he didn't.
correct.
That's
Yeah,
ex-
okay.
that's ex-
Yeah,
right.
right, yeah.
That's
No,
exactly what
that's
I'm saying.
the error.
Yeah.
That he laid aside divine attributes. That's
Right.
when he says the kenosis, or he limited himself, or
Right.
emptied himself. That's what some people teach.
Yeah.
And this is a big error of the church that I immediately thought of is Bethel.
Yeah.
Bethel teaches this. They teach that Jesus was just a normal Christian man, and that he emptied himself of his divine attributes. And why do you suppose they do this? That's a setup question. Sorry, but any idea why they would want to do this?
I don't know why they do a lot of things they do.
No, it puts us. It makes him very, very small, and it makes us very big.
Sure.
We can do what Jesus did.
Right, that's the
We
point, right.
are just like Jesus.
Right.
So all the miracles he did, we can do. All the stuff that he was able to do, we can do, because we're the same. He emptied himself of all those things, and now we can do even greater works than him. And they teach this stuff there, and it's heresy. It's absolutely, an error to teach that. But that's one of the examples of that. So, yeah.
Right. I think sometimes, and the way that Chad went at this, I appreciate it, because when we get to describing the attributes of God and the actions of God, sometimes they are beyond us all the time. But one of the ways that's helpful is to describe what it's not.
Right.
And what Chad's saying, he never ceased to be God. I remember the way that Walter Martin used to describe this, and I think it's good to think about it this way, is that what Jesus emptied himself of was the independent exercise of his divine attributes. And that's, I think, a good way to think about it.
Right.
Because he said, what I say, the Father says. What
Right.
I say is what I hear from the Father. What the works that the Father does, that's what I do. And so instead of, now there were times where he, and I don't even know, even in those cases where, where it seems like he just independently did something that was still the will of the Father. So I think it's a good way to think about it. It's just giving up the independent exercise of his divine attributes.
Yeah, while still maintaining or possessing them.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I think a lot of times people think of the kenosis, or this emptying, as a subtraction, but it's not. It's an addition. When he took on or when he took on flesh, and somehow that there was a subtraction of his divinity or something like that. But no, he still remained completely God,
Right.
and added the human nature. That's the hypostatic union. Same thing. But it's an addition to who he was, not a subtraction to who he is. That's helped me. I think Sproul said
that's
that one
important-
time.
important point to look
when
at.
when you think of it that way, it's like, no, this is, yeah,
Yeah. And all in an effort for redemption of the sinner.
right.
Right. That Jesus did what he did so that you and I could experience redemption.
Right. That there is nothing missing from the nature of the eternal God in Jesus.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, it's good. And I think when you look at that passage and the context of what it's about, it's not trying to teach something about Jesus limiting his divinity or something like
Right.
that. It's really given, there's this self-emptying attitude that he had that we're supposed to follow. And that's the point of Philippians 2, that each of us should be self-emptying and not, not these selfish people that promote us and promote what we want and put
Right.
ourselves first. We look to Jesus as our example of somebody who could have put himself first, had every right to, and didn't do that. And that's really the point
Right.
of Philippians 2 is for us to have that mind of Christ.
The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve
Right.
and to give his life as a ransom for many.
Yep.
But just to be clear. I want to make sure we're understanding each other, or that I'm not off in the way I'm reading this. He did descend a transcendent throne over all things that he created to come under even the throne of men.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking position. We're talking localization. That was definitely a difference or a subtraction for an ultimate addition.
Right.
Yeah.
But like that is something that he gave up or stepped off
Yeah.
of or away from to come under lower thrones that were not his, even though he never ceased to be God.
Yeah, the addition subtraction thing has to do with the hypostatic
No,
union.
yeah, no,
the
no,
idea
totally.
that he emptied himself of
Totally.
divinity. No, he didn't
Right.
subtract anything.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but as far as
Because
yeah.
the emphasis here seems to
yeah.
be that he left where he was to become what we are, and that's what I mean by position or
Correct.
And it's
localization.
to the locality.
That's what I mean by the
Yeah.
emptying. I think
Yeah, makes sense.
the emphasis of the emptying in context here could be that just because it's stating it over
Right.
and over again. Yeah.
Well, and again, I think that's the example he's given us to follow. That's
Yeah,
what's clear
totally.
from that
Right.
passage. Is
So
you
we
guys-
leave our places, our
Yeah.
safe places, or our rightful places to do something that others need.
Right.
Yeah, humble yourselves and have
Yeah.
the mind of Christ to
Yeah.
put
And that
yourself below
passage
people.
goes on, if we were to keep reading it, to say that one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Like
Yeah.
there's, he condescended, subjected himself to lower thrones, ultimately moving towards the time when there will be no question who he is and
Right.
that he rules everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, the word is wherefore. Wherefore.
Yeah, it's
God
interesting.
has highly
Yeah.
exalted him and given him the name.
Yeah, it's even interesting to think, within that localization of what he became, what he emptied himself of to become one of us, is that he's then showing us how to pray. That's how you talk to God. Whereas he's always had just that constant, continual being one with the Father, fellowship with the Father, communication with the Father, whatever you want to call it, because they're one. But now he's showing us how to pray. He's stepping away to pray. If he's having a divine meeting or appointment with the Father, he's going up a mountain, to have that happen. So you're seeing that that's very different due to the localization of what he willingly
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, and the big, the big blow your mind kind of statement of this is that God was willing to do that for us.
It's crazy.
It's
Right.
crazy
That's crazy.
that he would at any point leave his glory and his exaltation to become, not just a man, but a man who was treated horribly by his
right.
own creation.
Right.
Is amazing. So
Well, and a man that knew that he was going to be treated.
Yeah.
wrongly. He came
Right.
for that express
an
purpose.
omniscient God who knew.
right,
Yeah. Yeah, that's why the incarnation, what we celebrate this time of year is, it should blow our minds all the time when we think about it.
Right.
Yeah, and being found in human form, he held himself by becoming obedient to the point of death. That was the purpose,
Yep.
the reason for the emptying, even death on a cross.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For the likes of us.
For the likes of us.
Yeah, for the
Imagine
likes
that.
of you people.
Mm-hmm.
The last one. That we
So
have,
hypostatic union,
go
before
ahead,
we move
yeah.
on, does play into even what we see right here in Philippians, right?
absolutely.
Where he is God, clearly, doesn't cease to be God, but takes on the form completely, fully of man,
Yep.
while maintaining,
two natures
his-
united but unmixed.
Yeah. And
There you go,
Jesus,
Brent.
Jesus stands alone. Like that claim isn't made of any other, so-called God out there. Like that's a claim and fact that's unique to Jesus himself.
Yeah.
It is, and it's the reversal of every other religion, right?
Right.
Where these things are laid out, what you have to do to get to God, to get to be
Right.
God, to be in God's neighborhood, to be around God or
Right.
something like
yeah,
this.
earn his favor.
Right, and this is the exact opposite of that. This condescension
Right.
to enter our world instead of demanding somehow that we come up to His.
Right.
Yeah, he goes to Samaria, right? Instead of, having the Samaritans come up the mountain
Yeah.
in Jerusalem, not that they would
the
allow
Christian
him
God pursues those that belong to Him.
to. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Came to seek and save the lost.
There you go.
Yep. Yep.
And we're the beneficiaries of that. We benefit from that.
Yep.
We're the
you go.
ransom.
Accompaniment.
Felt like Elmer Fudd there for a second. The next one, the last one, potentially, is somebody asked you, I believe, David, what does 1 Peter 4:6 mean?
You guys have all been asked this before, probably multiple times in your lives.
Yeah, usually I think where people are trying to go with this one is there's other verses that talk about maybe what they were wondering about, but
Sure.
I'm not sure because I wasn't there when they asked it. But let me read the verse real quick and then we can start talking about it. So 1 Peter 4:6 says, "For this is why the gospel was preached even to those who are dead, that though judged in the flesh, the way people are, they might live in the spirit the way God does."
There's a lot of people who like the potential of this verse.
Sure.
I don't think it means what they think it means in the context of it. That's my I'll
Context matters.
I'll tip my
Yeah.
hand and just say I don't think this because some people think this has to do with Jesus. You know, where did he go when he died? Who did he preach to?
Right.
What did he do? I
Well,
don't
you even
think,
have to back up farther.
yeah,
to
we will.
see some of that same language or weird ideas.
Yeah. I don't know that that's what this verse is talking about in the context
I agree with
personally,
you.
but there are those verses still, and I know that's what they're wanting to know about, and I don't even know if we're going to go there today, but that's
Ultimately, people want to know there's another chance for people, even if they screw up and don't accept Jesus, where they're going to have a chance to.
Yeah.
It's universalism. It's universalistic
Sure.
thinking, and love wins, maybe even type of thinking.
this is a difficult verse just for what it's worth. As far as if you look at the way it's translated in different versions,
It's an extremely difficult verse.
people change it up quite a bit. Like there's one, I think the NLT is just terrible. They just interpret it completely
Yeah.
and it's not even right. It's just like, oh wow.
I told this.
It's terrible.
Well,
I told this person who asked me this question this week that it's funny that Peter's the one that says Paul has some hard things
Yeah, right.
to say, and I said I don't know if any of Paul's maybe reached the level of this as far as difficulty
Yeah.
on the meter, and I think you can boil it down to 3 maybe actual legitimate possibilities, and I think only 2 of those are good possibilities
all right.
of interpretation because it's difficult. I don't think. You'd be hard-pressed to go, this is what this means, and that's it.
I agree. Let's just for the sake of context, let me back up and read the first part of
We
this.
need it.
Yeah.
So it starts in verse 1 of chapter 4. "Since therefore Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves with the same way of thinking. For whoever has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, so as to live for the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer for human passions, but for the will of God." So it's really kind of talking about how we're going to suffer, and he's going to go on to talk about how we're even going to be ridiculed for being righteous people who live in a way that is pleasing to God. So verse 3 says, "For the time this is past suffices for doing what the Gentiles want to do, living in sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless idolatry. With respect to this," and this is talking about non-Christians, "they are surprised when you do not join them in the same flood of debauchery, and they malign you. But they will give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead." And we get to verse 6. "For this is why the gospel was preached even to those who are dead, that though judged in the flesh the way people are, they might live in the spirit the way God does." And I'll leave it at that for now. And
That didn't help anything, even though we need the context.
well, the context helps in
Well,
knowing
context does help, but it still has several possibilities, and I thought you were actually going to go back farther.
Oh.
And maybe we will.
Well, we can.
Because this whole thing's a run-on for chapters, even 3 of
Yeah.
suffering is obviously, what the subject is, and them suffering,
Right.
the reality of that. But 3, you get some of the same language. I don't want to cut you off, though.
Well, no, I think the point I was just trying to get at is he's trying to give comfort to Christians who maintain
Yes.
righteousness in the midst
Through
of
their suffering,
debauchery.
yes.
There's all this debauchery going around. I'm not going to
Yes.
take part in that, and they're going to get made fun of and mocked for
Right.
it. Like, oh, you guys, you believe in the gospel,
Which is suffering,
You're
a
going
form
to
of suffering. Right,
you're
yeah.
going to believe
Ridicule,
this stuff, and,
yeah.
and you're not going to jump into the deep end of the
Yes.
debauchery pool with the rest of us, and they're being mocked for it.
Yes.
And God is comforting them in some way by saying, no, this matters.
Yeah.
Yes.
And some point, they're going to pretty.
Well,
much-
everyone's going to get their comeuppance.
They're going to get their come up.
Right.
So
The
hang in
living
there.
and the
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah. I don't know if that gives enough of that. But
No,
so anyway.
it's super helpful, but
Yeah.
when you go, this is where it even gets more confusing, but I think this is all tied. So when you
Yeah.
go back to verse 18, let's say, starting in chapter 3, "For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh." So there's some of the same language
Mm-hmm.
as 6, but made alive in the spirit. Same language as verse 6, chapter 4. in which, and this is where it gets weird again, he proclaimed to the spirits in prison, what the heck is that? Because they formerly, dude, why am I on?
Previously.
Because I couldn't. They couldn't obey. When God's patience waited in the days of Noah, so now we have a specific time that Peter's referring to while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. Baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you. So that's the whole context in which that interesting statement's made. Not as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God with angels. But my point is, like, this whole thing is tied together. He's building on something,
Right.
For this suffering theme. That same language, though, that looks weird in verse 6, the one that we're asked about, is the same language that he uses first with Christ back in chapter 3, right? Verse 18 and 19. And so I do think that we need to try to expand our brain, take our circle even out farther as far as what Peter's getting at leading up to verse 6, where he still talks about, there's this idea that Christ went somewhere and talked to dead people, right? Like, that's kind of where he ends up. And that's where things start to get a little bit
Sure.
weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or can.
So I didn't help anything, but I wanted to try to give us something a little bigger, a bigger target. So, yeah. Go ahead, Terry. I know you're ready.
I was just going to say that in a broader sense, every person that Jesus talked to in the world was dead.
Sure.
In the trespasses and sins.
So the spiritual sense.
Yeah,
in
spiritually
the
dead.
spiritual sense. And so, but there's a distinction made here
Agreed.
about the
Flesh.
being judged in the flesh and made alive in the spirit, according to the will of God. So I think that's however you're going to parse this out, you have to keep those things in perspective. And the other thing is that I think can help us get tracks to run on with this talks about a past event that the gospel has for this purpose been preached, okay, to even to those who are present, dead. So the easy way, as a matter of fact, Johnny Mack, I was looking at this morning, scratching my head, trying to figure out something.
You looked at MacArthur for this, huh?
I did. Well, I look at MacArthur all
No,
the time.
that's good. No, that's good.
Is that all right? So my
What did he say?
excommunicated.
What did he say?
He just said that it's an encouragement for present believers that even though they're suffering for the whatever they have done in the flesh, which is very similar to what the consequences, you could call it, of what the unbelieving world is still suffering, that their judgment has already been done in Christ. Their final judgment has already been accomplished in Christ, so that they are made alive. Unlike the people, because there's a distinction being made here between the saints and those that aren't, right? And he wants them to be encouraged that the gospel is as operative and powerful now, and it was even to those who it was preached to then that are now dead, that did suffer some of these same things that they're suffering. That's basically what he said. Was said a lot. I know.
Yeah. No, that's
it's so. All right, let's
that's
go.
good.
Yeah, it's not totally satisfying.
Look, I don't
but
know
it is
where I
an
land.
explanation.
I don't know where I land on this, so it's not like I have a dog in the fight.
Yeah.
It's always been weird, and so there were 3 main interpretations that I think the ESV Study Bible kind of went to, because I was kind of looking everywhere, running everywhere, trying to grab onto something that.
ESV Study Bible.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they narrowed it down to like 3 kind of primary ways that people approach it. One of them being that it's a universal statement, which I reject and they reject. But people absolutely try to build that off of this.
Yeah.
Right? Even a purgatory idea, a Catholic idea, can come out of these verses. The 2 valid ones is when it comes to preach to the spirits, so it's even words like in prison. That's not used anywhere else for like hell or anything like that. But you do get that imagery in like Jude, where you have the angels that are reserved in chains, right? Which sounds like a prison term or description. And this is where it might get funky, but pneuma is just spirit, right? So it can be for an angel or a human being who's died. It just means spirit. So a lot of this could have to do with the reference to the flood, with how you view passages like Genesis 6 with the angels. And if it was Christ being referred to going to the angels, or the men of renown, if you allow for that, right, a hybrid race, which is part of the reason for a worldwide flood, it's not that they can be saved. So the gospel's not being preached so that they might repent of what they've done, of falling from heaven, but it's preached in triumph and victory to say, look what I've done regardless of what you tried to do. And I find that very compelling because I'm one of those whack jobs that actually interprets Genesis 6 as some kind of an angelic invasion, personally. I know that's weird.
Let's go. Keep going.
No, the other one just has to do with not the Noah part, but just verse 6 of chapter 4 of what he did. Basically, what was he doing those 3 days? He was dead, right? Well,
is that referring to this?
Well,
that's my question.
I don't think obviously chapter 3 is referring to that because Peter's specifically pointing back to a time, but 6 could allow for the idea of what Christ did once he suffered in the flesh.
Could.
Right?
Yes.
So he died like everybody else does, and then proclaimed because no one was going to heaven, to the presence of God pre-resurrection, as far as I think we can safely say that with our Bibles. So he went and proclaimed victory to those who were held until the atoning work is done. I think it can be valid. I don't know if that's where I'm at. I tend to like the first one better, that he actually went and proclaimed.
I like a different one.
I know. Do you guys, there's this podcast called The Haunted Cosmos?
I was thinking, I figured that's where you got this.
Okay. You know what? I probably just raised more questions than we answered.
So let me just make a real
give
boring.
us the answer.
No, this isn't the answer, but let me give you just a very boring kind of way to look at this. So when you talk about these people who are dead, it could be talking about those who have died previous to Jesus, like what you're talking about. It could be talking about those who have died since Jesus. So you've got these guys
since because of the gospel.
Exactly.
Well, and that's why. So again, this idea that this is a verse that is referring to this idea that he went back and proclaimed something or preached something somewhere. I don't know that it is. Now, I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm just saying I don't know if this verse is talking about this, because it talks about the CSB Bible, which is the Baptist Bible. Christian Standard Bible. It says, "For this reason, the gospel was also preached to those who are now dead, so that although they might be judged in the flesh according to human standards," so you've got these people that have been, by human standards, have been judging them for their stupidity, for not diving into deep into the debauchery pool with them. He's saying, though they might have been judged this way, now they're living they're living in a different realm. They've been vindicated by God. They're now
for sure.
And I think that might be all this verse.
But in 6, he is talking in a past tense.
Yes.
So if you look at verse 6,
preaching,
about
present living is present.
This is the verse in question, though, right? For this is why the gospel was preached even to. So Peter's pointing back to something that Jesus did,
which those people who have been dead, died in Christ,
Like he does say are dead, not were dead. Right, the gospel was preached to those who are dead. Right. Kind of present tense are dead.
I mean, there could just be this simple, and I'm not maybe explaining it well, but this idea that basically these people have been mocking Christians because they won't, you're wasting your life. And he's saying, no, they haven't. The gospel that was preached to them has saved them. And even though you guys have judged them by human standards, now they're in the presence of God, living according to a standard that God has given them, and they're alive in the Spirit. And so you're the one to be pitied, not them. And I don't know.
I do think that's the. I think that's what we should take away from this. I think that will preach, and I think it can preach, and I think it should preach, because we know it's saying that. But there are those little wordings within what it's saying.
Dude, I ignored the stuff. I ignored the stuff in chapter 3 on purpose.
I know. But even when you think of, I don't know how it all works, but even when you think of today, you will be with me in paradise. Well, Jesus didn't go to heaven. He went, to the grave, to the place where dead people go, right? He went to Hades, and so, but there's a reference to paradise. We have it with the rich man and Lazarus, and there's these chasms. There's two different compartments,
Abraham's bosom,
right? And so I almost see it as optional, to be again a proclamation of victory first there. You know what I mean? To those that were dead, apart from the atoning work actually occurring. I think it can be valid with verse 6. But I do agree that overall, like, everyone's going to get their comeuppance. So worry about you right now.
Sure.
Like, worry about you and let the gospel move through you and pour over you as far as how you live and how you conduct yourself and how you endure suffering.
And
right.
take heart when you live separated from the world, and when you don't dive in, like, you're not missing out. You're actually
totally agree.
You're gonna be rewarded for that. So even though we feel like we're missing out sometimes here, we're not.
Yeah, there's an eternal perspective that's being spoken to here that we don't often have. Right, our perspective is often the here and the now, and we do everything we can to avoid suffering. I mean, nobody wants to suffer, right? So we do everything we can to avoid it. But when our perspective is eternal, the sufferings of this age are just a blip on the radar when compared to eternity. And so if we're thinking eternally, then we're gonna put up with some things now that we might not otherwise put up with.
Well, and the it does fit in with the whole context of suffering with Christ and suffering for Christ, which is about chapter. Or the earlier verses that you read, and it does set the gospel against or puts the gospel as a hope, a future hope, which is realized for these people now,
right?
Over against present suffering.
Yes,
present suffering. And I think you just basically said you made more sense out of the way that MacArthur explained it than I did.
Well, I have a way of doing that. I'm kind of known for that. I'm just kidding. I don't think I've ever been accused of that in my life.
Because when you said that, I thought, I thought that's what I was saying, but I guess I wasn't.
I don't get that a lot. I was kidding. I do know that there's people that somehow take this verse and preach what you touched on to begin with, this idea of a second chance. Like, there's going to come this point where somehow you're going to have the gospel preached to you when you die, and then have a chance to respond then. Well,
this is what Rob Bell and that whole movement started to produce and promote is Love Wins. I mean, that was the title of his book, and the whole point is like, God gets everybody at the end. Like, hell's empty.
Yeah.
Heaven's full. And you can absolutely try to cherry pick it out of some weird, obscure sounding passages like this. And like I said, I've seen it with Catholicism too, with an idea or a validation for purgatory, where it's like, hey, they're suffering, they're paying back the wages that they earn, right, according to the flesh. But the gospel will eventually prevail once that's done.
And if you just take this verse, and you can go a lot of different directions with it, and all those things included, and that's where you have to use what the Bible specifically says about these other things to shut the door on those possibilities.
Totally agree.
Right.
That's where you have to.
For is appointed for one man, for died every man
that's
died once, and then the judgment, right? And so
Right.
you're looking at clear statements, right, that are made over and over again, like that one, and you can't ignore those as you're looking at something. They have to inform your interpretation of this, right?
Well, this is the idea of the perspicuity of scriptures, which is I don't know why I remember that word.
Perspicuity?
That's great.
That's a good
Can
word.
you spell it?
Yeah.
Yes. But
by the way, unless you're Enoch or Elijah, you don't have to die once. Sorry.
No, this is the idea of what you guys just described. You don't go to obscure passages to form ideas. You go to clear passages. So there are clear passages we can look at that we don't have to wonder about.
Yeah.
And then we can look at this one and go, okay, wait a second. Can this be teaching? Because this is the idea of what we threw out there, this idea that you might get a second chance after you die to come to faith and be forgiven, is a lie. That's a dangerous lie that will keep people on the road, to doing whatever they're doing and ignoring Christ, thinking that they're going to get a second chance.
It does. Any kind of earthly value now, any kind of necessity. And that's just,
I can see why Satan would want people to believe that.
Totally.
I mean, he's the deceiver, and if he can get people believing that, that's great. But that is an absolute lie. That's not the way it works. Now is the day. If you've been putting it off, if somebody's listening and they've been putting off getting right with the Lord, don't wait.
And absent from the body, present with the Lord. So if you're His right now, today, as a result of the gospel, the power of the gospel in your life, and an ownership of it, then you're not going and waiting anywhere for anything. You're not waiting for the gospel anywhere. Like you get Him.
Yeah.
like from this moment forward, you get Him.
Yeah. Amen.
So
that's good.
But I'll just say, like, I'm baffled by Peter a lot in his two epistles by the way that he Like his, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
the way he progresses.
Yeah.
So Paul can be hard sometimes, but I can kind of wrap my hands
agree.
around Paul's progressions that can go chapters in
Yeah.
a subject. Peter, though, is a little bit baffling to me. Like the way that he develops things is a little bit weird.
Yep.
Okay.
No, the section right before this is really
baptism.
baptism saves, and it's like, what is it? You know, because this corresponds to this. It corresponds to what?
Yeah, wait a minute.
You know, it corresponds to the water and saving, or does it correspond to what it's talking about before about Jesus died in the flesh and was made alive by the Spirit? I think it corresponds to that, but that's a whole nother day. Anyway,
Well,
Peter's
the
difficult.
The neat thing about doing things like this, it might seem like, since we end up with just about as many answers after
we didn't
going
answer
through this
anything,
as we did before, there's still, I think, a lot of value in it because as, you talk about, well, is this possible? Is talking about a second chance? Is possible? Is talking about purgatory? Is possible? Is talking about something along those lines?
Right.
That when you look at other scriptures that shut those doors, the amount of doors that are left, that what this
right.
could mean, are narrowed down.
Yeah,
and that's
good.
helpful. That's really helpful.
So like you said earlier, by identifying what it doesn't mean
Right.
because of other clear verses, that is helpful, even though we can't come out and say, it definitively says this.
We
This
know
is
that it
exactly
doesn't
what
mean
Peter-
that.
We
Right,
know it
right,
doesn't mean
yeah.
We know it definitively doesn't know that. Mean
Well,
that. Yeah.
and this is how you should study your Bibles. It's not like you find a verse that sounds kind of cool and says what you want it to say and then run with it. No, it's not the way it works. You got to do some digging and figuring some things out. So
Absolutely.
I thought for sure I could go back because I remember I taught through First Peter. I think you guys were doing something in Lapine at the time.
Oh yeah.
And so I thought, I'm going to go and look at my sermon on chapter 4 and find out what I said about this.
You said nothing.
No, it was the vicar that taught that week. And
What did he say about
he
it?
was
Yeah,
actually, he
let's
did a
hear
good
it.
job. He went through
Yeah.
and talked about I mean, surprisingly, he did a good job. I didn't mean to say it like that. He did a good job. No,
he
he did.
said that, Jordan, not me.
He did a
That's
good
right.
job with it. He basically said it all comes down to who the dead is here, and these are the possibilities. So he laid out possibilities, and then landed with the
So he didn't stick a flag in the ground.
and then landed
Yeah.
with the important point that the
Yeah.
text is trying to make.
There you go.
He did a great job.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
That's,
It was a little long. It was about 35 minutes, I think, or 37 minutes, which
that sounds exhausting.
he bags on
to sit
us.
through.
Yeah,
He likes 20-minute sermons. So
yeah.
anyway,
Sermonettes, just call them what they are.
sermonettes.
For Christianettes.
Christianettes, yeah.
Yeah.
Sermonettes make
Yeah.
Christianettes.
Homilies.
We're always open to questions. Like today, we may not have all the answers.
Yeah.
We will discuss
bring the
them though. We
questions.
will look at them and look at some possibilities. So if you got them, bring them to us. Like
Yeah.
whenever, just grab us, whether it's on a Sunday or whenever you see, or email,
Email or
whatever.
text us, whatever. Yeah.
Send it in.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, fellers.
Thank you, Brent.
Yeah.
You handled that.
Like a G, like a boss. Just kidding. I don't know. Somebody pray.
Boss man Brent.
God, thank you for your word, and thank you for collection of men that we can surround ourselves with. Thank you for giving the church teachers. Thank you that we can all kind of rely on each other and talk these things out that are difficult. I thank you that we get to be students still, even though people rely on us to teach, that we're still learning and just in the pursuit of truth. And so I pray that we would be diligent, careful, wise in that pursuit of truth. We continue to pray, God, for these families, these kids across the street that are walking over here and learning the Bible. I pray that it would be powerful and effectual, that that what they hear would be life-changing, that it would transcend anything that they've heard, and make a difference. And I pray that there would be even conviction for kids that have thought about signing up or have signed up, that they wouldn't waver. They wouldn't be lazy about it, but they would be dead set on walking across the street and participating in what's going on. So grant them that conviction, desire, and then expectation of hearing you and hearing about you. And so we thank you for this time. We thank you for what we get to do. Things like this are kind of fun in a lot of ways because they have to do with you. So thank you for your word, which is always extremely interesting, that we can't exhaust. And it's in your son's name that we're grateful. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.